Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mile High Sports today. I'm Shawn Drotar. You see that man on the side of the screen. That's Cody Roark, the lead NFL and Broncos writer for Mile High Sports and the host of the Locked On podcast for the Denver Broncos, as well as the author of the terrific Film Room series, which you can also find, by the way, right on the Mile High.
When did I write a book, man?
Huh? Yeah, you got to write a book. That's the next thing, right?
All right, yeah. We'll make it happen.
Well, as we look at the NFL divisional round, now we know the final four teams. A couple of these that'll be playing in the Super Bowl. Not maybe a huge shock in three of the four, but Washington bubbling up obviously is something of a surprise. But let's start out just for looking at this NFL division round, reacting to the results a little bit, and then let's also take a moment to look at where some of these teams are being successful and where the Denver Broncos might need to be a little better as well, because there are, I think, distinct differences when you look at some of these teams that went on through the playoffs. That the Broncos are missing some of those pieces. I don't think there's really any other way to say that, and I think for the Broncos and the NFL fans, it's informative to probably take a look and say, hey, how did they get from point A to point B? So let's start. Let's just go chronologically, and let's look at that start when they went with the Texans and the Chiefs. The Texans, I think, way more game than anybody expected them to be. They do fall 23-14, but the game felt closer than that.
Yeah, look, I think things kind of went downhill for the Texans against Kansas City. Look, they didn't open up the game very well to start. You allow a huge kick return, but their defense held up. Things kind of went downhill for them the moment C.J. Stroud kind of, I don't know if it was his ankle or his knee, but he suffered that injury that was kind of causing him to limp a little bit. But he still found ways to throw. And they also struggle with drops at the receiver position. And Kansas City, look, once again, we're having another conversation about the Chiefs here, either at, in the Denver level or even at the national level here, and saying, okay, hey, there's just some calls that happen that just make you scratch your head and say, like, all right, they're getting that because they're a team that's won back-to-back Super Bowls. Like, they're cream of the crop team right now in the NFL. So more than likely, in comparison to a team that's young, that has a second-year quarterback like C.J. Stroud, they may not get those calls. I think it's opened up a lot of questions about maybe the NFL being able to review 15-yard penalties. And look, Shawn, I don't know if there's the NFL wants to speed games along, right? But you can't tell me you can't have somebody up in the skybox, right, that has automatic access to what had happened instantaneously to say, okay, hey, that was not roughing the passer. We'll pick the flag up. You can do it within 15 to 20 seconds. So
we can do it. I mean, people are sitting watching on television, and the second they show the first replay, the Chiefs haven't even huddled back up again. We can see that shouldn't be a penalty, and I get it. I get that the Chiefs are who they are. I get that Mahomes is an enormous star, the best quarterback in the league. But boy, the last thing the NFL wants is to go the old David Stern NBA route where star calls are deciding playoff games. That used to happen in the NBA all the time. It's certainly lessened a lot, but it hurt the NBA product so much that they worked hard to make sure that it doesn't happen like that anymore, and they've made good strides. But in this case, yeah, I mean, the first roughing, okay, that one at least is questionable. I don't have a beef with it. The second one, when Mahomes basically, then pivots and slides sideways, kind of hits the deck. There's no way to avoid it. I'm not going to say that penalty won the Chiefs the game, but it did more or less close the opportunity out for the Texans to take it, given the other situations in the game.
Yeah, look, you think about it from a situational context. Let's say it's second down or it's third down, and, he slides, but he's going to be short. Oh, but, they're like, oh, we think that he got hit, while sliding 15 yards, automatic first down. Like, that takes away a possession there potentially for the Texans or any other team that's on the receiving end of that. And look, this isn't a, Kansas City thing. This is a league-wide thing I think that needs to be addressed. There are some other games where we see roughing the passer called. But Pat Surtain had a great point during that game while live tweeting it. And it was, what are defensive players supposed to do? Like, you're trying to stop the guy from getting a first down. But if the quarterback waits to the very last minute to slide and gets contact, like, that's not fair to the defensive players in any way, shape, or form. So there has to be a change here. And I know you and I this season have kind of talked about, like, maybe looking at a situation where maybe you get penalized for sliding in a sense, or maybe, I don't know, like, you have to do something that's clear and kind of showcase it. It's hard to do that because the game, and this is, I think, where the challenge is, the game is played at such a fast speed. Like, people get mad at players for, hitting a quarterback when he slides. But it's like you have to make a split-second decision. Let's go back to the LA Chargers game with Denver. Justin Bernard got called for a terrible roughing the passer because Justin Herbert slid at the very last second. Like, what is Justin Sternad supposed to do in that situation there? People who have played the game know how fast it is and how hard it is when you're talking about being able to pivot and the speed in which this game is played to change at the last second. It's so hard. And the NFL needs to find a way to say, hey, this isn't fair for defensive players, especially if a guy decides to slide late. There has to be a clear delineation of maybe what they can do to alter that. But my main takeaway was you got to be a team like Kansas City that has a built-in margin for error where they can make mistakes or screw up on a few possessions, and it's not going to hurt them or set them back. Other teams don't have that luxury necessarily. Like Houston didn't have that, but teams like Buffalo, teams like Baltimore, teams like Detroit had that built in a little bit.
What's that margin of error for Kansas City? Is it just the combination of Mahomes and Reed?
Probably. I think that. I think their defense, too. I mean, they have a legit defense there. Karlaftis and Chris Jones, their linebacking core, they're playing really good football. They have a good secondary. But I think it all boils down to Kansas City is a team that doesn't make boneheaded mistakes at the more crucial times. Like they understand situational awareness. I'd say that's one thing that's probably coaching.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And of course, again, 35 years old, Travis Kelce, we talk about the tight end position. And one of the things the Broncos simply don't have, that's a challenge there. But Kelce goes out after having a year, which he only had 3 touchdowns, but 7 catches, 117 yards, another touchdown. That is 20 touchdowns in his playoff career in only 23 games. I mean, figure that out. 23 playoff games, 2,020 receiving yards and 20 touchdowns. That is extraordinary. And obviously, most of that comes with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. But some of this is just the evolution of the tight end position from Rob Gronkowski into the Travis Kelce's and maybe the George Kittles of the world. We'll talk a little bit about Mark Andrews in a bit. But that tight end position has really become such a weapon for so many teams. And it is notable when you were looking at teams that were still in this playoff hunt, how many of them had distinct, clear focuses on the quarterback tight end combination. And that includes also a team we'll talk about, the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, look, I'm very impressed with what we've seen from Washington. The fact that, you got a rookie quarterback, you got a brand new head coach in that situation, and now they're going to the NFC Championship game. So, I think we've seen these conversations all year. Like you got Broncos fans trying to tear down Jaden Daniels to build up Bo Nix, and you got Commanders fans trying to tear down Bo Nix to build up Jaden Daniels. Folks, just stop and appreciate that the league looks like it's going to be in good hands with some of these really exciting young quarterbacks here. But for Jaden Daniels, here's the thing that he has that Bo Nix doesn't. I think he has better personnel around him in terms of offensive weapons. And you factor in that, they've got, I think a nucleus around them where you have 2 running backs that can make tremendous plays for you, right? They're not necessarily like the Saquon Barkleys or the Derrick Henrys.
Right.
Eckler and those guys provide different looks for them. They have a successful run blocking scheme there. And you got Terry McLaurin. You got a legit wide receiver 1 on that team. And you have a tight end. Like, that's the thing. Like, Denver didn't have a legitimate pass-catching tight end. And I think if they did with the current roster that they have, Shawn, and this is something we'll obviously start to preview throughout the next couple of weeks here, because the next thing that's up for the Broncos, NFL free agency on March 12th. So there's going to be a lot of previewing and looking at that. But if Denver had, they got Cortland Sutton, they got some young guys in Marvin Mims and obviously Devon Vele, Troy Franklin. But if they had either you add another wide receiver that's a legit playmaker or you add a playmaking tight end, things change here, but you also have to have a run game. I think that was another thing that, obviously we'll talk about a little bit later that kind of, Denver can learn from, but we talked about that margin for error. Shawn, the Detroit Lions had 5 turnovers in this game and still scored 31 points. Like the firepower's there. They have an elite level running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. They got a legit level tight end in Sam Laporta, an all-pro wide receiving core that they have there, and they still found a way to lose. And the key here, Jaden Daniels, the Commanders, they did not turn the ball over once. The Detroit Lions turned it over 5 times, and they still had a chance to be in it. So it's like the margin for error, even though that they were down, they still found a way, even though turnovers doomed them. And look, I think it was unfortunate for Jared Goff to play the way that he did, but for Jaden Daniels, man, he made some plays. The NFL is in an exciting place right now.
Yeah, obviously, Daniels looks terrific. Zach Ertz, as you mentioned, Ertz is 34, but gets 5 catches and the touchdown there. And there is nobody on the Broncos, with all due respect to Cortland Sutton,
No,
like Terry McLaurin. Nobody.
no.
And that kind of player makes a difference, especially when your rookie quarterback is not making turnovers. By the way, as we talk about the tight ends a little bit, you can Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix all you want. I've said that Jaden Daniels is going to win it. I said if I had a vote, though, I'd vote for another tight end. I'd vote for Brock Bowers, who broke records left and right at tight ends with guys like you and me throwing to him. So again, that position by default is something of a mismatch. And the turnovers, of course, make a huge difference no matter who you are. But in that game, of course, for the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs was absolutely electric, 175 total yards, 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery, still not himself, gets a little bit done. But, you have a guy like Gibbs. You have a playmaking guy that you can throw the ball to, like you talked about Eckler. You can throw the ball to, you can run him up the middle, you can run him to the outside. He's got game-breaking speed and agility. Those are weapons that make a difference. The teams have to have that going forward. For the Lions, bad game at the wrong time. And the truth of the matter is, let's not forget the injuries, especially on their defense. At one point, missing 9 of 11 starters this season. That's just devastating. And it felt like too much to overcome, which for Lions fans who were waiting for their very first Super Bowl appearance, just heartbreaking to go back and look at this game and this entire season and say, if they had just been healthier, things might be very different. But that's part of the equation too. Sometimes a little bit of luck and health comes into effect there. And that includes guys like Saquon Barkley. The Eagles add Saquon Barkley to the mix for them, a guy that has had injuries here and there in his history, as all running backs do. But Saquon Barkley dominates that game in the snow. A couple of these games, by the way, played in cold weather outdoors, something we've also talked about that for the Broncos when they went to Buffalo, you have to be ready to play January football outside. And that means that if you can't play at least a little bit of smash mouth, you're probably in trouble. The Eagles can play some smash mouth, but the Rams, again, Sean McVay's coaching is just spectacular consistently. Yeah. It is amazing how that guy will keep you in games. The Rams had a chance to win this game, but just too much Saquon, too much power football, and the Philadelphia Eagles won this the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, look, and once again, turnovers being a difference maker in this game. The Rams were driving, they turn it over. The Eagles get it, on the good side of field territory there, and they punch it in and find a way to continue to go up there. And look, I like your point that you made there, because look, if the Broncos want to be a serious playoff contender for the next handful of years here, you're spot on. Like, even if Denver, let's say hypothetically down the road, Denver wins the 1 seed, right? Here, it's pretty cold in December and January here in the Mile High.
What was it this weekend in the negatives at times? Yeah.
So regardless, you need to be able to be calloused enough to be able to play in these cold, frigid conditions. And look, whether that's in Denver, whether that's in Kansas City, whether that's in Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, like, you got to factor in, like, hey, January is going to be a cold month no matter where you go, unless the LA Chargers for some reason, or the Las Vegas Raiders, or the Houston Texans have a higher seed and you get to travel and go play in a dome there. That's the only condition. So you have to be able to be callous in that regard. And look, I would even say too, like, even the Rams, like, Kyren Williams had some big runs there. Turnover obviously was costly. Matthew Stafford had Puka Nacua, who just made at the end of that game an incredible clutch catch. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, because I picked the Rams. I was like, the Rams are going to upset the Eagles. And then Matthew Stafford throws it out of bounds on 4th down. I mean, Shawn, I was pulling my hair. I was like, wait, did he not know that it was 4th down? Because that was nowhere near Puka Nacua in that situation. But man, hats off to the Philadelphia Eagles defensively. That's a tough unit. And I think the Broncos can look at maybe some parallels there. The trenches, Jalen Carter coming up big in terms of creating pressure on Matthew Stafford. But even as well offensively, you're not going to find a lot of Saquon Barkleys that are going to be available for you. But, man, it really solidified my belief, and I wrote about this on milehighsports.com. The Broncos need to find a way to get a running back who can be game-changing in a sense, who can be a power back like that. I'm not saying like you're going to find the next Saquon or Derrick Henry, but, man, you got to find a way to have an effective running back that can change things up. And obviously I got something coming out of milehighsports.com that'll highlight maybe some options the Broncos could look at in NFL free agency. We're not even focused on the draft right now, folks. That's a little bit of ways away, but we'll have you covered when that time comes.
Yeah. Obviously, free agency is the first part of the equation. Obviously, it's kind of funny. I've always wished that the NFL would flip that. I'd love to see the draft first and then free agency, because you'd see teams filling what they weren't able to get in the draft to be a little more effective. In the end, it doesn't matter. The Broncos will have options, but it makes me think a little bit but you bring up Jalen Carter. DJ Jones is a free agent for the Denver Broncos after this year, and I've spelled it out last week. I put up multiple numbers, the advanced metrics on DJ Jones. His stop rate when you're talking about a play that resulted in a negative EPA, expected points added for the offense, the kind of things that happens basically stop on a third down, things like that.
Yeah.
DJ Jones' stop rate was almost 12%, the highest on the Broncos, right in the middle. That's a guy I don't think the Broncos can let go, but you and I will have a chance to talk about that a little bit more later. But let's go to the final one, of course. This was a Super Bowl caliber matchup on paper. Obviously, it can't happen in the AFC, and we got that kind of game. Ravens and the Bills. The Bills do get it done, 27-25. Another game in which turnovers absolutely wrecked the losers. The Ravens, of course, missed the 2-point at the very end where Mark Andrews can't pull it in. They also had a 2-point conversion a couple minutes prior to that was knocked away by Bill's linebacker. Either one of those means this game is going to overtime, and who knows what happens. But you lose the turnover battle 3-0, and you oftentimes lose games by 2. It's just that simple.
Yeah, Shawn, here's the thing, right? Two opportunities for a 2-point conversion where you get the ball at the 2-yard line. You're the biggest running back in all football. You have Derrick Henry. You're telling me you're going to pass it on 2 consecutive times? Like Lamar, I will say this. Lamar came in clutch at the end there. Look, you have to go 96 yards to go through and either, have a chance to score and then tie it up with the 2-point conversion. You lead your team all the way down, you score, and then you have the tight end drop. It was a rough game for Mark Andrews. And obviously Mark Andrews is a terrific tight end, but a rough game from him because he had a fumble, a series or 2 before that cost them, in big time manner here. But, it's even crazy. Like you factor in them losing the turnover margin against Josh Allen and the Bills, and yet they still had a chance, right? It's hard. Like when you lose the turnover battle, usually in a situation like that, if one team has 0 turnovers, the other team has 3, you would expect that you're going to lose by two or more scores at that point. For them to keep it as close as they did, I think is a testament to some of the powerhouses that they have. And look, we saw what happened with Lamar in that game. Like, you lose a receiver, he goes down. Now you got to rely on some other guys. And your only option really that you're consistent enough for the passing game is Isaiah Likely, who they should have targeted maybe on that 2-point conversion. We had him in there. He just caught the touchdown to give you life there at the end. But you don't have that. But you have 2 good running backs. Justice Hill had some good runs on the ground. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills did a great job, I thought, of spying Lamar Jackson. Another thing the Broncos are going to have to find. Matt Milano, 2 weeks in a row, playing QB spy against Bo Nix and Lamar Jackson. Did a terrific job with that. And then you just have Derrick Henry. And it's like you don't run the ball in that situation. To me, it's just mind-boggling. And now the Ravens are going to have to stew on that all offseason. Once again, it sets up a Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs AFC Championship. And that's going to be a very, very interesting one, and I'm excited to see how it's all going to come down to.
Me too. I picked the Ravens to win in this game. I picked the upset. It didn't happen because of the turnovers, but boy, I thought the turnovers are bad. Otherwise, I thought the Ravens, when you're looking at least on form, the way they were playing over the last couple of weeks, I thought they were the best team in football. They get knocked out, but you bring up the mistakes by Andrews at the same time. Look at those numbers by the 2 tight ends, Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. 9 catches, 134 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Again, the tight end's such a weapon. We've talked about Ertz. We've talked about these 2 guys here with the Ravens. We've talked about Kelsey, of course. The tight ends didn't do a lot for the Bills. Obviously, that's very much the Josh Allen show. With Josh
Allen didn't have to use his arm that much. It was crazy.
Right. So kind of a weird game there, but the Buffalo Bills do move on. Obviously, that I think that's the matchup everyone wants to see. You'd like to see, especially with a team without a historical precedent like the Lions getting knocked out. I'm like, with the teams that were left in the playoffs that were interesting, that felt like they had a real chance that have never broken through. The Lions, the Vikings, of course, 0-4 in Super Bowls, the Bills 0-4 in Super Bowls. And now we'll find out, because there were moments late in the game too where Josh Allen, as good as he was, made a couple decisions late that made me wonder a little bit. Like, you realize you have a lead, right? And taking chances with the ball. And this has been a Josh Allen thing. And I look at it, and you get away with it at times, but I do wonder in Kansas City, if Josh Allen has one of those moments where, look, you should hand it off, you should keep the clock moving, you're lucky enough to have the lead, don't get clever. Josh Allen has a tendency of getting clever in Kansas City because of what you talked about when we started this with the Chiefs. That's a way to lose a football game.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think this weekend's going to be crucial. I honestly think we're going to get the best versions of both of these teams here this upcoming week. And certainly it's going to be obviously fun. And obviously you want to say, hey, if you want to go watch some of the games, go check out our friends over there at number 38. I'm sure they're going to have a lot of good food, beverages, the big screens and everything to keep you warm. So it should be really good.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So obviously the AFC and NFC championship next Sunday, they go back to back as you expect. We'll find out about the Super Bowl. And yeah, at this point, look, you don't get where you're getting an accident. So don't be looking like, oh, who will the Eagles take on in the Super Bowl? Don't make that mistake. Don't be so sure. We all just saw what Jane Daniels did. That kind of ability, it's special. And when you're Washington, you're playing with house money. What a pleasant surprise to see that team come back, play as well as it did. All the nonsense with ownership over the years where they can't even get anything done. You get new ownership in, you get a new quarterback, you get all the new toys, and then boom, you're in the NFC Championship for the first time since 1991. So congratulations to Washington, and they're not going to go away easily. Is Philly the better team? Yeah. But Philly's had a couple of hiccups every once in a while too, and Washington has the ability to make it interesting if not. So looking forward to both of these. We'll obviously have an opportunity to talk about for the Denver Broncos, what they can take away, what they can learn from these, and how they can apply it. We'll do that in just a couple moments here on Mile High Sports Today.